Hey guys, this is Matt Invictus, and yesterday I saw something so horrible that it shocked me. It was so bad that I woke up this morning hoping that it was all a bad dream, but it wasn't a bad dream. It turns out it was 100% real, and I am talking, of course, about the new Justice League books that DC recently announced. Now, they've had some trouble with the Justice League books for a while, especially during the Rebirth era. You had Brian Hitch's run, the main book, that was like a pretty conventional lineup, like a Big Seven lineup. Technically, there were 8 members, but it was basically a Big Seven book. That was pretty gosh darn awful. And then you had a Justice League of America, which is a bit more, I guess, diverse, focused more on supporting characters, more original team roster, and that was also extremely horrible. And then I've not gotten to read any of Christopher Priest's Justice League run. I've heard mixed things about that, but it'll probably be ending soon to make way for these new titles, so it doesn't really matter. But so what they've decided to do is to basically break the Justice League into 4 separate teams, each led by a different character. The official, I guess, Brainiac. There was this Brainiac's idea, who is a villain, as most people probably know. So Brainiac is responsible for the Justice League, splitting up into 4 different teams, each with a separate purpose, a separate function. So it's and again, each one's led by a different member. You got the DC Trinity and the Flash. So, and honestly, this is a pretty good idea in concept. In fact, I'd probably have suggested something similar to it myself. It's okay, you're putting out all these Justice League books, none of them work. So it's okay, break up the big characters, give them each their own team to work with. Bring in a bunch new members, give each team a different premise, a different field of work. So this could have led to some pretty interesting concepts. This could have led to some good book ideas, but unfortunately, DC botched the execution big time, because these are possibly the worst Justice League lineups I have ever seen. Basically, it's a DC editorial playing personal favorites. They're not thinking about what characters would make the most sense on these teams, or even what would be the most marketable, what the fans want the most. It's just let's go with our personal favorite characters and just shoehorn all of them in. It's basically just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall to see what sticks. So these lineups are awful. And this isn't just me complaining that my personal favorites didn't make it. It's not me going, oh, they didn't include Power Girl, they didn't include Nightwing, so I'm mad. It's not that these lineups just do not make sense from any perspective. Before getting into them, I'll talk about the writers for the books. Scott Snyder will be writing the flagship Justice League title. From how it looks, there's going to be 4 different titles, but that could change because the information so far is a little bit sketchy. So Scott Snyder will be writing the flagship book. They haven't announced exactly which one it is. I'm assuming it's either the Batman or the Superman team. Now, I've not trusted Scott Snyder. He's capable of writing some decent works. He's written a few stories that I do really like, but after what he did to the Batman books in the long run, I do not trust him to handle characters anymore. So out of all the writers here, he is by far the most suspect. Then you got James Tynion. Again, none of these writers, they haven't announced which books any of them will be writing. You got James Tynion, who's best known for writing the Detective Comics for DC, a book filled with problems. There is so much wrong with his Detective Comics run. He kind of screwed up that series pretty badly, so he doesn't inspire any confidence either. And then you got Josh Williamson, who is best known for writing Barry Allen's book, which I naturally have not read, so I have no idea what he's like as a writer. He could be a great choice, or he could be a horrible one. But again, he spends his time writing one of my least favorite characters ever, so I have no idea. But so those are the writers. They could have done worse. There are worse people they could have picked, but again, none of them really inspire confidence. And there's probably going to be a 4th writer, because again, 4 books, only 3 writers announced. So there's another one that's up in the air. It could be Francis Manipool, who's attached for I guess art duties. He's done a bit of writing. He's not that good either, so that wouldn't change anything. But and then getting to the lineups themselves, way too many villains. Like about a third of the new recruits are some kind of a villain, and you could say that, oh, they're including all these villains, like, to feel fresh, so they can like really stir things up, open up new possibilities. But the thing is, heroes like being forced to work with villains, or villains appearing on superior teams, has been done to death. It's not even remotely new. They did it with the Justice League of America book. That wasn't very good. Lex Luthor has been working with the heroes throughout Rebirth. Harley Quinn, and this is Suicide Squad, do it all the time. So this all like heroes being forced to work with villains things. It's not that fresh. It doesn't really break any new ground. So really, they're just doing it because based on personal preference. And again, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You got like Sinestro on one of the teams. You got Sinestro, the leader of the Yellow Lantern, the Sinestro Corps, but not a single Green Lantern in sight. There's like 6 viable Green Lanterns, and they're not even, those are just the humans, not even counting the aliens. No Green Lanterns, but they got the Space Nazi to be on one of the teams. Now the large amounts of villains. Again, this could be connected to Brainiac, because again, he is a bad guy. But honestly, I feel like that would just be an excuse to have a bunch of bad guy characters that DC editorial drools over. That's just an excuse to include Lobo and Deathstroke and Star the Conqueror. Just fill it with a bunch of out of place characters that DC editorial has a hard on for. Then I mentioned that there's a suspicious lack of Green Lanterns on any of these teams. Also, I'm surprised to see that Aquaman is absent from all these teams. So it's like, you got all these characters, but no Aquaman. So where the fuck is he? Why is there is a few more Blarnga missions, but I think Green Lanterns and Aquaman not being here are the worst. This is very suspicious. And then you've got all the teenage members being added to these teams. Most of the current Teen Titans are on these teams, are divided across them. And this is very suspicious because, one, most of them are not in any way qualified. Like Beast Boy is on the Batman team. Nothing against Beast Boy, but he is not very qualified to be a Justice League member. And then and you got Damian Wayne, which is really confusing because we all know Damian Wayne's Robin. And then in terms of Bat family characters, both Dick Grayson and Tim Drake would be drastically more qualified for the Justice League than Damian is, but they went with Damian because he has the most favor among DC higher-ups. They hate Dick Grayson. They're indifferent at best to him. They just went with Damian, the one who makes the least sense on these teams, because that's who they like more. So and also another suspicious thing is like these new teams are filled with Teen Titans members, but the Titans, the adult team, are completely absent from any of these lineups. Titans are the one with like Dick Grayson, Wally West, Donna Troy, Roy Harper. So they ignored all of them, despite the fact that, one, those characters are older, so they'd fit in better, and two, Titans actually sells better than Teen Titans. So Titans are the more popular team, but they excluded them from any of these new Justice League books and filled them with the Teen Titans because, again, those are the characters DC editorial likes more. They're being selfish. Now, you could be saying, they went with the Teen Titans characters because you got that Titans show coming out on a DC streaming service, so they're trying to do synergy. But in that case, where the hell is Dick Grayson? Dick Grayson's going to be like the main character on the Titans show, but he's suspiciously absent from all these lineups because, again, out of all these characters, Dick Grayson's the one DC editorial doesn't like very much. So I kind of feel a little bit insulted by these rosters. You got Barry Allen leading one of them, and there's no reason for Barry Allen to be leading a team. There are more qualified characters, like a Black Canary. She has a history as a team leader. They could have gotten Dinah Lance. That would have worked a lot better. Again, Dick Grayson. I know he's already leading the Titans, but he's a total social butterfly. He can handle leading two teams at once. They went with Barry Allen because he's the one that DC editorial has a giant raging boner for. But not all the additions are bad. I'm glad to see Starfire on I think the Superman team. I'm glad to see Martian Manhunter back on the Justice League. Zatanna is a good choice. So not all the choices are horrible. Not all the new additions make me angry. Just most of them. And then you got the costumes. These are by far the worst Justice League costumes I've ever seen. They're worse than the New 52 designs, which were ridiculously over-detailed. They had these are by far the worst. I like sometimes I like post this like really bad fan redesigns of costumes I found on like Tumblr or DeviantArt. I'll post them on Twitter and I'll like laugh at how horrible they are. This is what they look like. They look like they were designed by a bunch of uninspired Tumblr users who don't get the appeal of superheroes. A lot of them are just like their heroes the characters' regular designs with these like random black splotches over them. They look absolutely hideous and horrible, and it's possible that they're only temporary because I think all of them have like these random purple lights on them. So it looks like they could be the result of Brainiac. Could be that Brainiac designed new Justice League costumes for some reason. So they'll only be around temporarily. Maybe for the mini-series that will be launching these titles. But yeah, I would like all the characters to throw their new redesigned costumes into a bonfire and destroy them and never speak of them again. And go back to their regular looks. So, yeah, I think those are all the problems I can think of with the lineups and the creative teams and everything. So I think that the one good thing that could come out of these new Justice League books is that DC will do better work with the characters who didn't make the cut, like Aquaman is not in any of these teams. Hopefully that means that they'll be able to do bigger and better things with Aquaman in his solo book or whatever books he appears in. I talked about like the Bat family members that were excluded, Dick Grayson, Tim Drake. Hopefully, while you got Damian running around with the worst Justice League team lineup ever, because just look at that line. You got Barry Allen leading. You got Harley Quinn, who I don't hate, but she has no business being on the league. You got Damian. Again, I don't hate him either. But totally unqualified. You got Cyborg, who has failed spectacularly as a Justice League member ever since they included him. And then you got the Atom. I think that's Ryan Choi. He's the younger one who's okay at best, but not enough to save this team. So, well characters like Damian are screwing around with these horribly conceived Justice League books, maybe like Dick Grayson and Tim Drake. The rest of the Bat family, DC will do a better job because they won't like be focusing as much attention on them. And as we all know, like the less editorial interference a book has, the worse it usually is. So hopefully while like DC's busy screwing around with these guys, some of the supporting characters in DCU will be able to thrive more. And again, I mentioned that most of the current Teen Titans are on these new teams. Hopefully that means they'll be relaunching Teen Titans. They could bring a focus to some of the other teen DC heroes who've gotten the short end of the stick lately, like the old Young Justice characters, Connor Kent, Bart Allen. They could bring them back, make them new Teen Titans. But honestly, it's more likely that they'll just oversaturate the current Teen Titans team. They won't make any changes at all. But it would be nice if they did. So again, I am not looking forward to these books. I might give them a chance at first, just for credibility. But I'm not looking forward to them. And my biggest hope is that the characters who didn't make the cuts will be better off because of it, while DC editorial runs these concepts into the ground. So that's all my thoughts for now. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe. Good night, everybody.